Brothers and sisters in Islam, when we think about being better servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or oftentimes we may use the term being more religious, we often think about praying more or fasting more or giving more charity, for example, all of which are very important acts of worship. But we seldom talk about the heart, about which our Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا صَلَحَ صَلَحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ. If it is sound, the heart, if it is sound, if it is upright, then the remainder of our bodies will be upright. And so we simply cannot give enough attention to the topic of the heart. Because the heart is not just a physical organ that pumps blood, but it is a spiritual instrument that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created to know Him. And the more it is attached to its creator, the more tranquility we will find. And the more distant it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more we will find ourselves searching for solutions, searching to fill that void that we feel inside of ourselves. And one of the most important acts of ibadah, acts of devotion that the heart should be engaged in is shukr, gratitude, showing thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, Allah Azza wa Jal specifically mentions in the Quran this ni'mah of giving us hearts, and that He gave it to us so that we would be thankful. Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَاللَّهُ أَخْرَجَكُم مِّن بُطُونِ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا. Allah Azza wa Jal brought you forth from the wombs of your mothers, knowing nothing. That is, that the human being is created knowing absolutely nothing of this dunya. And then Allah Azza wa Jal says, لا تعلمون شيئا وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة. And Allah Azza wa Jal created for you and gave you your ability to hear, to see, and He gave you your af'idah, which is the plural of fu'ad. He gave you your hearts. These hearts by which we know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. These hearts which some may translate as intelligence. Because again, the heart is a spiritual matter. It's not just a physical organ. For what purpose? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. So that you will be thankful. Allah Azza wa Jal gave us, Allah Azza wa Jal didn't just create for us the ability to hear, the ability to see, and the ability to recognize or be conscious and cognizant. But these are the three things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in this ayah, because these three faculties are those by which we know things. So He created us not knowing anything, and then He gave us these faculties so that we would know things. The most important of them is that we know the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we recognize them so that we thank Him for His blessings subhanahu wa ta'ala. That being the case, we have to then understand what the job of the shaitan is. Because Allah Azza wa Jal also explained to us in the Quran that the shaitan is going to strive to make us be from amongst those who do not use their faculties to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, as Allah Azza wa Jal mentions to us the story in Surah Al-A'raf of shaitan, when Adam was created, shaitan says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ثُمَّ. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the shaitan, shaitan says to Allah, ثُمَّ لَآتِيَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ. And it's talking about Adam and the children of Adam. I'm going to come to them from in front of them. مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ وَعَنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ وَعَنْ شَمَائِلِهِمْ. And then I'm going to come to them from behind them. I'm going to come to them from the right and from the left. For what purpose? وَلَا تَجِدُ أَكْثَرَهُمْ شَاكِرِينَ. And you will find that the majority of them are not thankful. They're not thankful. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clarifies for us that the job of shaitan is to make us be ungrateful for the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in fact, every time we are not thankful for a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether that blessing be the blessing of health or the blessing of wealth and using it for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether that be the blessing of a righteous spouse or righteous children or good parents or whatever it may be, whatever that blessing is that we are not thanking and not showing our gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for, then we are in fact following the footsteps of shaitan. So brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us throughout the Quran to be thankful to Him. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَاشْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ إِن كُنْتُمْ إِيَّاهُ تَعْبُدُونَ. Thank the blessings of Allah, if in fact it is Allah Azza wa Jalla that you worship. So from the qualities of the worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that they are thankful. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in several places in the Quran contrasted between shukr and kufr. And so shukr, as we translate it as gratitude or thankfulness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the opposite of shukr is also kufr. Kufr because it means to be ungrateful. And the most ungrateful of the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those who reject Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or reject faith in Him altogether, which is why that person would be called a kafir from kufr. But the root of that means to be ungrateful. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says in the Quran, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, so remember me and I will remember you. وَاشْكُرُوا لِي, and thank me, show gratitude to me. وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ, and don't be ungrateful or don't reject faith. So what does it really mean to be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And we need to pay attention to this because Allah Azza wa Jalla has commanded us to be thankful. Does it just mean that when I have something that's nice, I say Alhamdulillah? Does it just mean I say thank you when somebody does something good for me? Is this the way that we show thanks, or is it deeper than that? And it is definitely deeper than that. And without understanding that, we cannot fully be from the shakiri, which we're commanded to do. It's like this. If you told somebody who just accepted Islam yesterday, you have to pray 5 times a day, what do they have to do? They have to learn how to pray. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to fulfill that command. So, if the person doesn't know, they're supposed to stand up and face the Qibla and say Allahu Akbar. And before that they're supposed to make wudu and all of these other things, they're not going to be able to pray properly. Likewise, Allah Azza wa Jalla commands us to thank Him. If we don't know what it means to be from the shakirin and how to truly thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we're not going to be able to fulfill that command. And so there are 3 things that we have to look at when it comes to thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first of those things is i'tiraf an-ni'ma bil qalb, that with your heart you recognize the ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is easier said than done. It's easier said than done. Wallahi, all of us right now, alhamdulillah, at least the people I can see, we're sitting here and we're breathing with no apparatus. You can just go. But if you go to the closest hospital and you see someone on a ventilator, they wish that they could just do what you're doing, just to be able to breathe. Are we conscious of this ni'mah? And are we thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the ability to be able to breathe without even giving it much thought? Or any thought for that matter. The fact that we can drink, we don't have a tube down our throat. The fact that you can relieve yourself if you don't have a bag attached to you. These are ni'mas from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that oftentimes go unthanked because we're not even conscious of the fact that it's a ni'mah. And so Allah Azza wa Jalla has given us these blessings. And the first part of thanking Allah Azza wa Jalla is to recognize that blessing within the heart. It means that you have value for that blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, and that you recognize that it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Now, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, in talking about this very point, he says that he has given a lot of thought to what it is that helps the heart of a human being become truly attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that it is not mutashattit, that it's not all over the place, and that your heart is dedicated and devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And he said that the foundation of this, pay attention to this, the foundation of this is to know that all blessings are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Whether they be the blessings of ta'at or the blessings of laddat. Which means what? That we recognize that hidayah is a blessing. Being guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The fact that Allah azza wa jal has you here in the masjid for Salat al-Jumu'ah and not too busy at work. That Allah blesses you to, that's a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ni'mah of ta'ah. That your heart is inclined to the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also the blessings of al-laddat, those material and tangible enjoyments that we have from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To recognize that it is all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to inspire you to remember those blessings, to be conscious of those blessings, and that he aids you in thanking him for those blessings. This is what it means to recognize the blessing with the heart. So you recognize that it's from Allah. You know that it is Allah Azza wa Jal that will help you be conscious of that blessing and aid you in thanking him for that blessing. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِعْمَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. And whatever blessing that you have, it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But just as those blessings, Ibn al-Qayyim goes on to say, just as those blessings are solely from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and from his grace, remembering them, being conscious of them, and thanking them will only happen with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's tawfiq. It will only happen if Allah guides you to thanking him. Which takes us to point number 2. That is, that you are mentioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's favors with your tongue. And that you are ascribing those favors to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The minute that you ascribe a favor to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the minute you haven't thanked Allah. And this, unfortunately, is the condition of the majority of the people. When we do good, think about when you were in school, you did good on a test. Was it? Alhamdulillah. Allah Azza wa Jal made it easy for me to do the things that were necessary to do good on that test? Or was it, I worked very hard for that. I worked very hard for that grade. I deserve a raise. And that's why I got a raise, because I deserved it, because I worked so hard. See, that is the wrong approach to thanking Allah's ni'mah. Wallahi, and if you take a step back and you think about it, you'll realize why. Yes, did you work hard at your job and mashallah, and you got a raise? Believe me, there are people who work harder than you and they make a lot less than you do. It's from Allah's favor that you got that. There are people who worked a lot harder than you and didn't get the same grade that you got on that exam. Because Allah Azza wa Jal made it easy for you. But see, a lot of times we don't realize that. I come from such a difficult background and I push myself. Now, subhanAllah, Allah blessed you. You had 2 parents in the home, for example, whereas many of your competitors didn't. That's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we think about the work that we put in. Who gave you the intelligence that you have in the first place? You got that from where? Who created you the way that you are created? So all of these things come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you recognize that, you have to mention that with your tongue. وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. When it comes to the favors of your Lord, then mention them as favors from Allah. Don't ascribe them to yourself. The majority of people on earth ascribe their blessings to themselves. And they should be scared that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take them away if they don't ascribe them to the one who has given them. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَيَرْضَى أَنِ الْعَبْدِ إِذَا يَأْكُلَ الْأَكْلَ. Just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with his servant if he just eats something very small when he eats. أو فيحمده عليها أو يشرب الشربة فيحمده عليها. So he eats that piece of food and he praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it, or he drinks a drink and he praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that. And this is something that we can take away and just incorporate in your life. When you get done eating, make sure that you praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From that which has been narrated on the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, Alhamdulillah alladhi at'amani hada wa razaqani min ghayri hawlin minni wa la quwwah. All praises to Allah who has fed this to me and provided it for me without any strength for myself, without any power or strength or might for myself. But do we forget that? We just eat and we drink and we forget that this is a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The having food itself and the ability to actually swallow and pick it up with your hand. SubhanAllah. These are all blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we need to mention that with the tongue. So that's number 2. The third thing that will help us, or that is imperative for us to be considered to be from the shakirin, is that we thank Allah with our limbs. So with our heart, with our tongue, and with our limbs. What does it mean to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our limbs? It means that whatever blessing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, that you use it for His obedience, not for His disobedience. And again, many of us fall short in this. You know, one of the scholars of the past, a man came to him and he was complaining about how he didn't have a lot, you know, how he was poor. And so he says, would you give away your eyes for 100,000? He said, absolutely not. He said, what about your ears? For 100,000. He didn't specify 100,000 what. We can take it up to 1 million, and you can think about it. Your eyes right now for 1 million, would you give them up? Your ears for 1 million. Your hands for 1 million. So he asked him a few questions. He said, look, sounds to me like you have a lot of hundreds of thousands, and you're complaining about being poor. Now, let's use that for our purpose. When we look at us and who we are, and we look at these faculties that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with, your eyes, you recognize them as a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't want to give them up for any amount of money. What do you look at on your phone? Are you looking at that which is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Are you looking at something that you know is displeasing to Allah? How are you using the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you? If you're using them to disobey Allah, in every sin that a person commits, every sin that any one of us commits is a misuse of Allah's blessing. If you say something that is haram, you backbite somebody, you're slandering somebody, you're gossiping and so forth. You're using your tongue that Allah Azza wa Jalla blessed you with. And subhanAllah, we recognize the blessing of the tongue sometimes. Not just be able to speak, but every time you have a cold and you can't enjoy your favorite food because it doesn't taste like anything, you start to realize, man, this is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Are we using that blessing in a manner that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or are we using it in a way that is displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So the fact of the matter is that we have to be, in order to fulfill that command, to be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to be thankful with our hearts, with our tongue, and with the limbs. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ما بعد. There are certain things that we can do, brothers and sisters in Islam, that will help us along this path, this road to being from the shakirin. Because this is not something that happens overnight. It takes real jihad. You have to really push yourself to be truly from the people who thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there's a fiqh that I want us to understand, if you will. And I'm not talking about fiqh in the sense of Islamic jurisprudence. I'm talking about true understanding of some of the things that we can do immediately that bi'idhnillah will help us to recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessings. And they're combined in a very important hadith that Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates, Sahih Muslim, when he says that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam went to the companions and he said to them, "Man asbaha minkum al-yawma sa'iman." who from amongst you today has started his day fasting? And Abu Bakr said, Ana, I have. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, who from amongst you today has followed the janazah? And Abu Bakr said, I have. The Prophet ﷺ said, who from amongst you today has fed someone who is needy? Abu Bakr said, I have. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, and who from amongst you today has visited someone who is sick? And Abu Bakr said, I have. And the Prophet ﷺ said that these khisam, that these four things will not combine in a servant in a day except that he will enter Jannah. Now, besides the reward that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned for combining those four deeds in one day, which we should strive to do: fasting, following a janazah, feeding someone who is poor or in need, and visiting someone who is sick. Besides the great reward that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned for that, think about the common denominator. And the common denominator is that these four things help us to recognize Allah's blessings upon us. When you fast, fasting in general heightens your awareness. It heightens your awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it makes you more conscious of His ni'am, especially the ni'mah of food and drink. But in general, fasting makes you more aware. Following a janazah makes you more thankful for the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you life and another opportunity to turn back to Him and to increase in good deeds. When you feed someone who is needy, it's not just that you recognize or that you're more in tune with the fact that you have food, it's that you're more in tune with all of your material blessings. Because that person that you're feeding that's in need, food is just one of the needs that they have. And so you start to realize that, alhamdulillah, I do have certain things that maybe I wasn't as conscious of before. And when you visit someone who is sick, you start to be more in tune with your own health. No matter what pain you may be going through, no matter what things you may be dealing with, you recognize that your situation is not as bad as the next person's. And this is why our Prophet ﷺ, encouraging us to be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, says, لا تنظروا إلى من هو فوقكم. Don't look to those who are above you. انظروا إلى من هو دونكم. Look to those who are below you. هو أجدر and لا تزدروا نعم الله عليكم. Because it's more likely that you will not belittle the favors that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. But we live in a society with social media where all you have to do is just open up Instagram or Facebook and you start to see these people. They've traveled all over the world, mashallah. They went here, they went there, and you start comparing yourself to everybody else. His car is better than my car. Her house is better than my house. This one's wife does more things with the kids than my wife does. And we start to compare ourselves. And when you compare yourself to those who are above you or who you think are above you, you will be more likely to belittle Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's favors upon you and not thank them. Look to those who are below you. This is the instruction of our Prophet ﷺ. And this will help us to be more thankful. And there are many other things that we can do, including Salat al-Duha, which I hope that you will incorporate. The Prophet ﷺ said that every morning when you wake up, there is sadaqah, a charity due on every joint that you have. Think about that. 360 joints in the human body. The Prophet ﷺ said, uttering alhamdulillah, saying subhanallah, all of this is sadaqah. And ta'mur bil ma'ruf, to command the good and forbid the evil. All of this is sadaqah. And that which will be sufficient for all of those things, or which will take the place of all of that, is rak'atayn tarka'uhuma min ad-duha. 2 rak'ats that you pray during the time of duha. This will show your gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And salat in general was one of the things that our Prophet ﷺ would do to show his gratitude. In fact, you all are probably aware of the hadith of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, where she talks about the Prophet ﷺ praying until his feet would swell. And she said, why are you doing this? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has pardoned you for all of that which has passed and all of that which is to come. He said, أَفَلَا أَكُونُ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا. Should I not be a thankful servant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Last but not least, brothers and sisters in Islam, is to remember to thank the people whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made as the cause for the blessings that you have. Our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man lam yashkur an-nas, lam yashkur Allah." Whoever has not thanked the people has not thanked Allah. Whoever has not thanked the people has not thanked Allah. Let that sink in, because we're not talking about the people maybe who come into your life, from time to time. Don't forget the people whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in your own homes. Thank them. Brothers, thank your wives daily. 25, 50 times. Sisters, thank your husbands daily. What happens is, because of the familiarity between us, we often forget that this is a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But think about that brother who's 70 years old, who doesn't have a wife anymore. And the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with a wife. As much as she may get on your nerves, and as much as you may get on her nerves, but Allah Azza wa Jal blessed you to have someone in your life. And you look at it. Don't look at it as a job. Well, why should I thank them for the job? They're supposed to do that. Your wife gives you food. And you say, well, I bought the food. Well, what's the food going to do? It's not going to cook itself. Thank them for that. And even if they don't thank you, it's not about your relationship with them. It's about your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Are you thanking Allah? If you haven't thanked the people, you haven't thanked Allah. Brothers and sisters, we cannot be petty in our relationships and keep score. If we're not thanking the people in our own homes for the things that they do, even if it's a duty, we recognize this is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in order to thank Allah, we have to thank the people.